Hello guys, welcome back. Hope you're all doing well. It's Chetan here from Devil Cube and I'm back again today with another tutorial. This tutorial is going to be so cool and so awesome because we have a lot to learn in this tutorial. We're going to be talking about icon designing using the material design guidelines, more specifically for adaptive icons. Now there are two parts of this video and I'm going to put just mention the timeline on the video where we're going to be covering the icon designing, and the other part of the video is going to be about talking about adaptive icons. So for the first part, I'm just going to be showing you guys how to design the icon using the material guidelines. And if you guys want to jump right into the adaptive icons part, you can just move to that part of the video and start watching from there. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the icon that we're going to be creating, but before we get into anything, I want to give a big thanks and a big shout out to two people who helped me a lot in gaining this knowledge and understanding and clearing all my doubts and questions. They are Michael Cook and Tom. Now I put a link down in the description to check out their social media accounts, and these guys are basically designers and they design icon designing more specifically. I think they do a little bit of UI and web designing and things, but I'm sure that they are icon designers. A few days back I kind of checked out the Dribble profile, and the icons that they had created just blew my mind, and they were so good and so amazing, and I really wanted to learn it and obviously teach you guys how to do it. So I contacted them. I asked them a lot of questions and doubts, and they helped me and understanding what these are. They gave me a couple of videos to watch, articles to read, and so many things that definitely which any person would not do it for free, and there's nothing that I can do in return to them other than give it a shout out. Now another thing that I want to talk about is these guys, along with two other people, have founded this company or a group, I'm not sure, and it's called Papermill Collective. Now this is basically a design service agency or whatever, I'm not sure what to call it, and they provide services like web development, UI designing, UX, and icon designing. And I'll put a link down below in the description where you can check out their website. A lot of awesome and a lot of fun stuff which you can learn and get inspiration from, and it's been really amazing to talk to these guys, and they were so helpful. So now I'm going to link two videos in the description, and these are basically seminars or speeches given by Michael on designing adaptive icons and getting a brief understanding of the material guidelines themselves. So if you want to check it out, definitely go. I did watch both of them and they were very helpful in helping me understand more about adaptive icons and designing adaptive icons. So if you guys do end up getting any kind of questions, or you guys get stuck up anywhere, just let me know in the comment section or hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, and I'll definitely help you out. So you don't have to worry about that. With that being said, let's get into the icon designing. Now, Google has given the material guidelines on the website, and I'll put a link down below in the description. Now, one thing you need to note that these are just guidelines. These are not rules, and these are just guidelines. Basically, the fundamentals that a designer needs to follow. Now, you can make a little bit of tweaks to these guidelines to make sure that it suits your icon, but you cannot change everything. There are only a few things that you can change, and I'll introduce you, and I'll be talking about that in the video when I'm showing you guys the design process. Now, I'm going to be talking about product icons and not system icons. A small introduction as to what product icons. App icons are product icons, and icons like the Wi-Fi icon, settings icon, they are called as the system icons. Now there is so much information, as you can see, that's been given by Google. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So I'm going to break down everything for you and show you guys how to get an icon done. Now the first thing is you want to identify which software you're going to use. You can use vector-based software or a non-vector-based software like Photoshop. If you're using vector-based, you can use Illustrator, Figma, or Sketch, and a non-vector-based is Photoshop. Now, the things you need to note when designing the softwares is the size of the artboard or the icon itself. Now, Photoshop is to be done with a document size of 1024 by 1024 because that is the maximum size an icon would need on a device, and anything below that can be scaled down. But if you design it smaller and then you scale it up to a bigger size, it's going to get pixelated. So 1024 by 1024 for Photoshop. Now, if you're using any other software like Sketch or Figma or Illustrator, there is a lot of templates that are available online, and Google itself has a template for Illustrator called product icons. It's called as a product icon sticker sheet, and that's what we're going to be using to create. Now for Figma and Sketch, I'm sure there are a lot of resources available online. There's even a website called as Apply Pixels, which has been created by Micheal, and he's one of the best icon designers I have ever seen in my entire life. Links will be in the description. Everything will be in the description, guys, so don't worry about that. Okay, so let's get into Illustrator. So this is the template that you get, and I've hidden a lot of these layers over here, and I've just kept the key lines layer on. Basically, it's gonna look like somewhat like this with some other stuff. So this is what I have. There are two things to do when you're designing for adaptive icons. One is a foreground layer and one is a background layer. To give a brief introduction, a foreground layer is basically the icon and the background layer is basically, you know, the base. But together they are called as the adaptive icons. But for the purpose of designing, let's consider the look and the design of the icon as the foreground and the background as, you know, the background, you know, just the base. Okay, so the icons have to be created in specific shapes. Now there are 4 shapes. Let me just show you that right here. So there you go. So we have 4 shapes. We have a square, we have a circle, we have a vertical rectangle, and then we have a horizontal rectangle. Now the dimensions are given here, which is 152 dp or 152 pixels, and the same thing over here, and this is basically the same. Now the size of this artboard is 192 by 192, and that is actually the size you need for the adaptive icon. Now this we're going to be using the one which is basically the square, so 152 by 152. So let's get started. So I'm going to click on my rounded rectangle tool and just click once. So make sure I have a layer. So I'm going to go and call this foreground. Oh, actually this is going to be the background. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just click, and I'm going to type in 152, 152, and the corner radius needs to be 12 points. And go ahead and click on OK. And I'm going to go and align this to the vertical and horizontal center. Now, when it comes to color, Google also has their own color set, which you definitely have to use, and there is no compromise on this, or there's no tweaking. So let's go to the color over here. So if I go to my color section, you can see Google has their own set of colors, and they have been given codes to this color. Now there's also an app on the Google Play Store, and I'm not sure if it is available on iOS, but this app helps you. This app gives you the material palette with the codes and the hex codes on your phone. So it's gonna come in very handy, and sometimes when you're working offline, it's gonna help you out a lot. Now for this purpose, we're gonna be using only 2 colors. One is the 500 series and one is the 900 series. Now they also have the hex code. Now why are all these other colors given? And that is when it comes to designing the apps or the user interfaces. Now the basic color is going to be the 500 series and the darker colors are going to be the 900 series. So if you want to get the color palette, you can download that over here, or you can also go to the resources section where you can download it. And once you open up Illustrator, if you want to import it, you can go to Window, make sure you have swatches on, and you can click here, go to Open Swatch Library and choose Other Library, and there you can open swatches and import the file that you have downloaded, and that is called Material Palette. And once you open that up, let's actually open that up. Material Palette. This is the Material Palette. I'm just going to put this on top so we can have a look. So I'm going to be using the blue, so I can type in blue and I get the light blue and the light blue and the normal blue and also an indigo. Now as you can see, this is the 500 series and this is the 900 blue color. So for the basic, for the background, I'm going to set this to a 500 blue color. So now the whole concept of material design comes with the feeling of the real life visibility of how objects look. So assume this is a piece of paper. The thing that would make it look real is a bit of elevation, and that is done with a shadow. Now let's go and start off with the shadow part. Now there are 5 layers, so I'm going to be doing the background first. As you can see, it says finish layer, but that's going to be done in the last, and this is basically how the elevation looks. As you can see here, this is the blue color, which is the background, and this is what is going to be shown on your smartphone, not the white part, but this blue part with this white part. So let's add a little bit of shadow to this. So let's start off. So I'm going to go to Effect, Stylize, and choose a drop shadow. The opacity is going to be 20. You can click on preview and you can see this over here, and the offset For the X is going to be 0. For the Y is going to be 2. And for the blur, that's also going to be 2. Now you can change the opacity to 20 to 25 or 30% depending on the look of the entire icon or your smartphone. Let's go for something like 25 or 20. I think I'm going to stick with 20. Go ahead and just click on OK. So if you come here to your appearance panels in the properties, you can actually see that we have this drop shadow. You can click on it and change the settings again. So I'm going to go and select this FX button and go to my stylize and choose another drop shadow. And I'm going to click on apply new effect. And as you can see, I now have 2 copies. So the first one is going to be 20022, and the second one is going to be, the Y offset is going to be 0 and the blur amount is going to be 1. So basically we want to give 2 sets of layer. If I click on preview, you can see what we're going to get, and I'm going to go ahead and set the opacity of this to 25 actually. Click on OK, and this one also is going to be 25. Okay, and if I go to my layers and hide the key lines, you can see we have this nice, beautiful shadow right down there. Obviously, you can change the settings of the shadow if you guys want it to look better. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is add in a little bit of tint and a shade. Now, let me show you in the guidelines. So as you can see over here, we have a tinted edge and a shaded edge. So basically, which is going to be like a highlight. So the light is falling from the top and the bottom over here. Now, if you're using Sketch or Figma, you're going to be using an effect called as inner shadow. But unfortunately, Illustrator doesn't have the effect called inner shadow. So if I go to my stylize, I can see only inner glow. I need an inner shadow. So instead of doing that, what we're going to be doing is taking that approach in a different way. So I'm going to make a copy of this by pressing Ctrl C and Ctrl F on my keyboard. And as you can see, I can hold down Shift and move it across to the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to get rid of both of these drop shadows. So we have only this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, make a copy by pressing Ctrl C and press Ctrl F. Okay, so now we have 2 copies. All I'm going to do is press the down arrow keys once. Okay, so you can see we have this small gap over here. And then I'm going to select both of this. Come here to my Pathfinder, which is over here, which automatically shows I'm using Adobe Illustrator CC 2018, which is the latest version. If you guys are using a different version, you can go to Window and choose Pathfinder. And I'm going to go and choose this button which says minus front. So now as you can see, we have this, right? Just this. Now the color to be given to this is white. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, come here to my align properties and set this to align horizontal center. And this is what it is going to look like. Now we're going to select this, come here to the opacity and set this to 20%. So now you can see we get this tiny blue small highlight. Let me show you that in the guidelines. So as you can see, this is what we are kind of looking at. And the guideline says a height of 1 dp and opacity of 20 and the color is set to white. So this is something that you have to follow. The next thing we can do is we can select this, make a copy by pressing Ctrl C and Ctrl F. And I'm going to rotate this, hold down Shift so you rotate it in increments of 45 degrees. And I'm going to bring this down and snap it right over there. Now you can go to View and choose Smart Guides to help you make it snap better. Now the color for this is being given as the tint and shade value. So basically this is basically the 900 series. So what I'm going to do is let's go to my material palette. And I'm going to click on this which says the blue 900 and just click on that. Okay, now this is already with an opacity of 20. So if I come here to my properties, the opacity is set to 20. If I set this to 100, it's going to look like that. We don't want it to be so harsh. So we're going to reduce it down to 20 as given by the guidelines. So set it to 20. So now our foreground, our background is done. I'm going to go ahead and just lock this layer. Let's go ahead and create a new layer and let's call this foreground. And we are good to go. Now, when creating the foreground, you can use any shape you want, but the guidelines, let me go to my guidelines. The guidelines specifically use shapes such as circles or, like squares or rectangles. It's always best to stick to the natural and the geometric shapes. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be obviously using a rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck, make sure I have my key lines visible, hide my background layer, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a rectangle like so. Click on this. Now for the rounder rectangle, let's see the dimensions. It is 128 by 176, so 128 by 176, and the roundness stays the same. Okay, we kind of messed it around, so let's just rotate it. All right, there we go. I'm going to align this to the horizontal and vertical center, and then I'm going to shrink this down a bit like so. And let's turn our background layer on. Now the foreground layer, I'm going to go and set it to a color which is not completely white, and I'm going to call this F5, 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 which is a nice white color, but not completely white. Click on OK, and it has no stroke, which is good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a little bit of this curve over here, which is like basically like a chat icon. I'm going to press P on my keyboard to get the pen tool, and I'm going to click once over here, click once over here again, and click once over here. So I have 3 anchor points. Then with my direct selection tool, which is over here, I can click on this and then just move this over to the side like so. Now I want to give it a little bit of curve. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, select this anchor point and click on this button. Oh, sorry, select this anchor point and click on this button, which is going to convert it to a smooth anchor point. Now I'm going to select this tangent. All right, and make sure I'm going to hold down shift so that it becomes a vertical tangent. And this one, I'm going to hold on alt and just drag that down till I get a nice curve that I'm going for. Let's see. Okay, let's do the same thing over here. All right, so we have this nice looking chat box icon. Now the next thing we want to do is let's go to the guidelines and show you guys. So we have to apply the same tinted edge on the top and the bottom, but no, the tinted edge on the top is a compulsory, but the shaded edge on the bottom, which is this, is not compulsory, and now I'm not going to be using it in my situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this again by going through the same principle. Press Ctrl C, Ctrl F, bring that 1 pixel down, select both of this, go to my properties and choose the minus front button. And this is going to be a complete white color. So let's shoot it to a complete white color. And then I'm going to go and set it to horizontal align center. So now we can see this nice thing. Now, if I reduce the opacity of this to 20, let's see what happens. Right, basically it disappears. Now if your foreground color is basically like a blue color, then obviously you're going to have to reduce the opacity. But since my foreground color is already white in color, which is not completely white, I'm going to set it to 100%. Now you can also add the same tinted edge at the shaded edge at the bottom, but I'm not going to be doing that. It's the same process again. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add in a drop shadow to this. This is what the guidelines say. So let's go to stylize and choose a drop shadow and preview. Okay, now when you're doing it for the foreground color, let's actually click on OK and get rid of this. This black background looks very harsh. So in order to fix that, what we're going to be using the same color of the foreground with the background with the 900 series color. So I'm going to select this, go to my properties, and drop shadow. You can go to the color and you can go to color swatches and let's go to the blue 900 series. Where is our blue 900? And click on this and click on OK. And then we're going to reduce the opacity of this 25 is OK and click on preview. Now you can see it's a much more gradual and a beautiful drop shadow other than the black one. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my properties again and I'm going to add in another drop shadow. Sorry, not rasterize. Go to stylize and choose a drop shadow and apply a new effect. And this time the offset is just going to be 1 with a blur of 0 and click on OK. Now this is definitely not what we're looking for. So in order to fix this, we can go and take this drop shadow and move it on top. I'm sorry, we need to select this and move this drop shadow on top. And there you go. Now this can be used as the bottom inner shadow, but that's completely up to you. If I go to my app icon, I actually didn't use it at all. So I'm not going to be using that for now. I'm just going to hide that drop shadow for now. And just to make sure I don't touch anything, let me just lock the background, the background layer. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So the next thing is the long shadow. Now this is one of the most important things that gives the material design, the icon, the material look. Now let's take a look at what the guidelines say. So unfortunately the guideline doesn't give it quite specifically, but if I come to the completely at the bottom, we can see what's actually happening over here. So let me just, break this down quickly for you guys. So the first thing you need to identify is where the shadow is going to come from. Now, you can choose the left corner over here, or this corner, or this corner. So this is going to be a must because we need one edge over here, and this corner or this corner. So I'm going to stick with this like my original one. So the drop shadow is going to start from here and not from here. Okay, so what you need to do is, let's actually lock this layer and let's create a new layer and call this drop shadow. I'm going to get my pen tool by pressing P on my keyboard, and I'm going to head and just click right over here. And now, before you do anything, hold down Shift on your keyboard, and because the drop shadows have to go with an increment of 45 degrees. So as you can see, wherever I go, I can set it to a 45-degree increment. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and just let's actually zoom in. All right, I'm going to come till the edge to the bottom over here, click, hold down Shift, and I can click over here again, and let's come over here. And this is where you kind of have to approximate it. So if I just click over here and hold down Shift again, you see I kind of, miss it, so, it kind of goes because I need it to end right over here. So I'm going to go do that again and do that over here. Let me just overshoot it a bit and explain how we can fix it, and we can close this up right over here. Now I'm going to get rid of the fill because I want to concentrate only on these two. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press A on my keyboard to get the direct selection tool, select this anchor point, hold down Shift, select this anchor point, and then I'm just going to move my arrow keys down until it kind of finally touches this. And then I'm going to select this anchor point and slowly make sure you see it kind of snaps, doesn't allow me to go off track of the 45 degrees. And I can click on this where it says, come on, intersect, and boom, there you go. All right, let's select this, and I'm going to go and put this behind the foreground layer. And what I'm going to do now is click on the gradient, because we're going to be adding a gradient to this. Now in the gradient panel, we are going to go and set this to -45. All right, I can double click on the layer to see it. So -45 degrees. The last color is going to be a white color, and the first color is also going to be a white color, but the opacity of the last color is going to be 0, and the opacity of the first color is going to be 10. Now 10 is something that you can change. I'm going to set this to say something like 15 to give a more dramatic look, and just click OK. Now I feel that the foreground, let's take a look at the foreground, has, the drop shadow is not too powerful. So I'm going to set the Y offset to 4 and the blur to 4 and click on OK. And that's going to give me a much more nice drop shadow. Now that's again something that you can change. So the next thing is we're going to add these 4 dots. So it's just basically 4 circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get my ellipse tool and hold down Shift and just create 4 circles. Let's actually create it like the Google Assistant icon. So we're going to have a big red color icon over here, and then let's make a copy and bring this down like so, and then we can make this a little smaller. Okay, and I'm going to go and just copy these and apply the same color. Okay, so this is going to be blue. I can press I on my keyboard and just click on this. This is going to be red. This is going to be yellow or orange, and this is going to be green. Okay, and we can select these 4 and hit delete, and then select these icons, press Ctrl G to group them, and I can align them horizontally in the center and vertically in the center. Now obviously if you want to add shadows or an inner shadow to this, that's completely up to you, but it's obviously not good to have more than 3 layers of elevation. So basically this is the first layer, and then this is the second layer, and it's not good to have another 3rd layer. But if you think it looks good on your icon, then definitely go for it. Now the last and the final thing is to add in a finish layer. Now what is the finish layer? What Google calls is basically a beautiful lighting layer, as you can see over here. Okay, so let's do that. Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, let's actually go back. Okay, now there is a finish layer given by the actual, the template. So if I put this on top, you can see the difference in color. So basically you can actually see the actual finish layer over here, but I'm going to show you how to create it. So let's go to a new layer. and let's call this the finish layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go select my background, make a copy by pressing Ctrl C, and before pasting, I'm going to select the finish layer and press Ctrl F on that. And I'm going to go to my properties and get rid of the drop shadows, and I do not want that. I just click on it to delete it. Now let's go and double click on the gradient tool. We're going to add a gradient to this. So let's click on this button to add a gradient, and this is going to be again a -45. Now the color says this, which is 10 and 10. Okay, we want to set this to a linear gradient, -45. Okay, and it's going to start off with 45 and midpoint is going to be 32. And there we go. Now you can see the slight the slight highlight, which is basically that, and that falls on the entire layer. So that's pretty much it on how to create a beautiful looking material icon. Now before we get into adaptive icons, let's learn how to export it. Now you have to export it in multiple formats. So if I go to my file and choose export for screens and click on the artboard, so let's just pick this artboard. Make sure you don't select the white background, only the elements. And what you need to do is go to this button which says Android, and boom, we get all these versions. Usually the version that's been used is XXHDPI, which is 432 pixels, which is at 4x of the basic. And just click on export artboard and you are good to go. So now let's talk about adaptive icons. Now there is an article on Medium by Nick, and he's a designer at Google. So whatever this is completely legit, and I'm going to take you through as to what this is. Now, the reason we have to create adaptive icons is because of Android Oreo's new app icon format. Now, what is adaptive icons? Let me just show you instead of explaining. So let me come down somewhere over here and just observe the screen, okay? Now, as you move, you can see the icons get a parallax effect on the foreground and the background, right? And when you touch on it, it kind of zooms in and zooms out. Let's take a look at this one, right? As you can see, you click on it, you move left to right, you can kind of see the parallax effect, and that is adaptive icons. Now, when you are a designer and you're designing for adaptive icons, you need to take into consideration two things. One is there is going to be a foreground layer and there is going to be a background layer. Now, how do you know whether it's going to work as an adaptive icon or not is what I'm going to show you now. Now, let's take this example as a situation. Now, you can use this entire foreground and background included as the foreground, or you can use only the chat box as the foreground, right? So let me take a situation where I take only this as the foreground object. Now, Nick has given a download link to the adaptive icon template, which is over somewhere over here. You can see this for we have Affinity Definer, Banjo, and Figma, and the Illustrator template over here, and that is what is this. All right. So now what you need to understand is the size is the most important key thing. Now the adaptive icons are 108 by 108 dp, and to give you an example, let's go to the layers. I'm going to uncheck the foreground and the background just for the sake, and let's click on the grid. And this circle, if I go to the properties, you can see it's 72 by 72, and that is the maximum size. And this entire document is 108 by 108. So if I go and make a rounded rectangle, click on it and choose 108 by 108 and align this to the horizontal and vertical center, you can see this entire object is 108. And our object needs to be within the safe zone of 66 dp. So let's go and take this, make a copy by pressing Ctrl C, Ctrl F, and I've reduced this to 66 by 66. So our object, which is basically the foreground, which is basically the chat box, has to fit inside this 66, and that's the most important thing. There is a lot of information that's been given here. Both layers are 108 dp by 108 dp. The background must be fully opaque, while the foreground may include transparency, and these layers are stacked on top of each other. So what I'm trying to say is when you have to give the background element, it has to be completely opaque. It cannot be transparent. And the foreground color, which is basically this Android icon with the shadow, is basically the foreground element with the transparent background. So let's go ahead and go to our layers, and I'm just going to get rid of these lines which I don't want. And let's select this. So let's select the background layer, just copy that and come here and just paste. And obviously it's going to paste it much bigger. So I'm going to go and make sure that this is a square, scale this down, align it in the horizontal and vertical center, go to the properties and get rid of these drop shadows, and boom, there you go. We have our background layer. I'm going to go ahead and just place this Control X and paste it on the background by pressing Control F, and we have it on our background layer. Let me rock the background layer. So now let's go ahead and get ourselves the foreground layer. Okay. Now the finish layer is going to start on this. All right, on the foreground layer. And we're going to do that when we import it, when we push it over there. So let's go to the foreground and the drop shadow, make a copy by pressing Control C, come to the adaptive icon and press Control V, and yeah, whatever. So now we have to go obviously and shrink this down. So I'm going to shrink it down pretty much. Okay. And let's take the grid actually and select all of this and choose a kind of a black color so we can actually see it. Okay, and then let's lock this up, and let's group this by pressing Control G. Okay, and now as you can see, the drop shadow is kind of extending beyond the circle, but that's completely fine because that's going to be cropped off anyway. Okay guys, so now it's time to test our adaptive icon. Now as you can see, I've just turned off the grid and I have the foreground and the background layer, and yeah, this is what we have. So the first thing you want to do is you want to export them in this particular way, when just for the purpose of testing. So what you want to do is make sure that you have only the background layer selected and everything else is hidden, and you want to go to File and choose Export and choose Export for Screens. Then you can come here to the Artboard section and we can call this background, and make sure that when you press on Android, you get all this, and you want to uncheck everything except the XXX HDPI, which is 432 pixels. All right, and you want to go ahead and click on Export Artboard. Okay, and once you do that, you want to go and just hide the background and make sure you have only the foreground, and the foreground contains everything and the icon including the drop shadow. You go perform the same action, go to Export for Screen, and we can call this foreground. Okay, and same for X, and then choose Export Artboard, but I've already done that. And once you have that, we're going to go into a browser and we're going to come on to this website called as adapticon.2.io. Now this is an awesome, amazing, fantastic website created by Micheal Flarup, so big shout out to him. Definitely check the website out, and also you can check out his Twitter link over here. So thank you, Marius, for creating this awesome website. And what this website actually does, it gives you the ability to see how your icon will actually work as an adaptive icon. Now, as you can see, there are so many different icons that have been prepared for the purpose of adaptive icons. So if I show you an example, let's probably take, I don't know, let's take this one. So this is being created by Julian Gomez. So all these icons that have been created, you can actually see who did them. And what actually happens is when I go to the animation over here, so we have 3 customize and ask an animation. When I go to animation and I click on the stop button, you see what actually happens. Let me actually take another one. So this icon has been created by Kristen Ruiz, and this is this icon for Slack. And when I come here to the animation tab, you see we have a couple of options over here, and when I click on this, you see what happens. So right, you can see the parallax effect, and you see the letter S, which is basically the foreground layer, doesn't actually, you know, go past the circle, right? And when you can zoom out and zoom in. This is what happens when you tap on a button. And also you can type in the speed. So let's set this to say something like 1000. I don't know if it takes 1000. All right. Yeah. So as you can see, it even shows you the speed. So let's set it to the default 320, and yeah, that's the default one. The next one is when you click on customize, you can see we can see as to however round this is. And as we are exporting this as a, you know, like a square or a rectangle format, it's going to adapt to this shape as well. So everything is going to fit over here, and individually you can click on this button and you can individually mask the shape and choose whatever shape you want. You know, I don't know what the purpose of this is actually for, but that's just for fun, I guess. But the most important part is the mask. So this is the circle, this is the rounded rectangle, this is just the square, and then we have the squircle. These are the kind of icons that you see on a couple of icon packs and on the Redmi phones, right? So how do you import yours? So only thing you got to do is click on this button, which is the first button, and you get two options. So you can either select the object from your directory, or you can drag and drop them into the window. So I'm going to click on this background, and as you can see, I'm going to select the background over here, click on open, and the foreground, I'm going to go and choose this one again. This is my foreground. All right, so there you go, we have our adaptive icon. Let's test it. So if I go to the animation and click on it, you see the icon, this rectangle chat box stays right in the center. It doesn't go past the edges. So the same thing over here. This does go a bit, but that's completely okay because that happens sometimes. Same thing over here, and we press and zoom out. All right, so there you go, and it looks pretty cool, pretty crisp, and we can, you know, just see the different options that we have. And even when we set it to the circle, you see the drop shadow slowly fades away, and it looks really good and really awesome. So that's how you test your adaptive icons. So that's pretty much it on all about designing for adaptive icons with the Google Material Guidelines in Illustrator and testing them to make sure that they work perfectly. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any kind of questions, do let me know in the comment section, or hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, or drop me an email. I'll definitely reply to them. If you have any other questions or requests, feel free to mention them in the comment sections down below. Subscribe to my channel for more amazing content, and I'll definitely see you guys in my next video. So till then, take care and bye-bye.